Reformed thinking. Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This is where we dig into the source material you send us, aiming to pull out the key insights you need. Today, we're talking about time, but maybe not in the way you usually hear about it, like just for getting ahead at work or something. We're looking at Christian stewardship of time, using Scripture's wisdom and a reformed view of God's sovereignty as our guides.
Yeah.
And the sources you share, they really highlight this tension, don't they? It's central to Christian life, really. How do you balance being disciplined, being intentional, which the Bible clearly wants us to be, with also being humble, submitting to God's plan, which the Bible also demands? It's a tricky spot.
It really is. That's the tightrope we walk.
So that's what we're diving in today.
Yep.
How do we use our limited time, really make the most of it without becoming arrogant, thinking we're fully in control? And the main takeaway from these sources, it's striking but simple. Christian time management isn't ultimately about you getting better or faster. It's about self-sacrificial love for other people. And that starting point, it changes everything about how you look at your schedule.
It absolutely does. It shifts the whole game from just personal efficiency to spiritual faithfulness, you could say. And looking at the source material, it kicks off by emphasizing just how incredibly valuable this thing called time really is. It's the currency of life itself, and, it's always slipping away.
Yeah, no pause button, no rewind, it just keeps going.
Exactly.
And the sources use this really powerful comparison. It's stuck with me. Time versus money.
Ah, yes. That one's quite vivid.
They argue that time is infinitely more precious. Why? Because no amount of money can ever buy back even a single moment you've lost.
Think about that, you listening right now. We track our money, right? We budget it, we invest it, we worry about it. If someone just, started throwing $20 bills out the window, we'd think they were completely mad.
Definitely.
Yet, how often do we just throw away hours, maybe whole days, just fritter them away without a second thought? The sources really press on this. If we treat our money like we treat our time, people would think we were insane. That disconnect is, it's revealing.
It's a pretty sharp critique of how we often live, isn't it? Just letting time drift. The material frames ignoring time's passage as like a constant danger.
Yeah.
And wisdom, then, is realizing our days are short and stewarding them carefully. They're gifts, right? Finite gifts from God.
Precisely. And that's why this whole idea that, time management is just some modern corporate fad, it's just wrong.
Right. It's not a secular invention.
Not at all. Scripture got there first by a long shot. It gives us a clear mandate for being intentional with our time.
And it's not just a suggestion, is it? It feels more like a command running through both the Old and New Testaments.
Yeah, Paul gives us what the sources call a kind of charter for this. It's in Ephesians 5, verses 15 and 16. He says, "Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil."
Making the best use of the time. What does that really mean in the Greek?
It's interesting. It literally translates as redeeming the time, or buying back the opportune moment. Like, it's a valuable commodity you need to rescue from being wasted.
Buying it back.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's a call to pay attention, to be awake to how we spend our minutes.
Exactly. And this isn't new wisdom. Look way back to the prayer of Moses in Psalm 90, verse 12.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic.
Long before productivity blogs, Moses is praying, "So teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom." Number
our days. Count them. Realize how few there are.
Right. The path to wisdom starts with recognizing how short and, frankly, fragile our time here is. If you think you have forever, you'll probably waste today. But if you remember the clock's ticking, you approach things differently. With more seriousness, maybe.
Sobriety.
Yeah.
The sense of stewardship. So if time is this precious, finite gift that leads straight to the next big question, the theological one, who actually owns this time? Is it really mine?
And here's where the sources bring in that hard but happy reminder, as they put it. It's from 1 Corinthians 6. If you adapt verses 19 and 20 just slightly to fit our topic, the message is pretty direct. Your time is not your own. You were bought with a price. So glorify me in your schedule.
Wow. Okay, glorify me in your schedule. That completely reframes it, doesn't it? Suddenly, time management isn't about my personal goals, my efficiency. It's about fulfilling the purpose of the one who bought my time in the first place.
Exactly. If Christ owns us, then the resources he gives us, and time is definitely one of those, need to be used according to his will. And when faith is guiding how we use that time we're borrowing, essentially, there's one main principle that has to direct it all.
Love.
Love, yeah. The sources point straight to Romans 13, verses 8 and 10, love for others fulfills God's law. That has to be the engine driving all our planning, all our efforts to be disciplined and intentional. If the ultimate goal isn't loving God and loving our neighbor, then even the best laid plans are kind of missing the point already.
So sanctifying time isn't just about, like, scheduling prayer or church stuff. It's about actively spending our time on others through all those different acts of love that our specific calling involves.
Right. And the sources bring in a really key insight here, drawing on people like Luther. Good works glorify God, yes, but how?
Not because God needs them, right?
Exactly. God is totally self-sufficient. He doesn't need anything from us. So, when we do good works, they aren't for his benefit. They're entirely for our neighbor's benefit. Luther had that great line the sources mention. It's not God who needs your good works, but your neighbor does.
So our neighbor is the target, the recipient of our time stewardship.
That's a good way to put it. They're the ones who need us to spend our finite time, our energy, our skills in ways that serve them in love.
So when Moses prayed, teach us to number our days, maybe the lesson is that we count them so we know how much we have to pour out for the people God puts in our path.
Your planning needs to account for your neighbor, not just for getting yourself ahead. That's the positive side, the mandate.
Okay, got it. Intentionality driven by love makes sense. But then the sources pivot pretty hard to a warning, don't they?
If they do, just like ignoring time is bad, there's an opposite danger. And it's maybe even more common today in our culture.
Just
Getting totally consumed by our calendars, just obsessed with scheduling, planning, optimizing every single minute. The sources call this focus nearly epidemic in our day.
epidemic, strong word. And why is that so dangerous? What's driving it?
Well, the sources suggest it often comes from a bad place. Maybe deep anxiety, needing to feel in control,
Right.
or selfishness, my nose above everything, or just plain pride thinking we actually can command the future.
Right. And that leads to a serious warning in the material.
A very serious one. The danger is that the god of time management, our perfect system, our calendar app,
Yeah.
it will fail us. It can't take the place of Christ and his providence, his right to direct our lives.
Relying on the system instead of God.
Yes, yeah. When we trust our spreadsheet more than the sovereign hand of God who actually holds tomorrow, we've already failed the real test.
And the Bible speaks directly against that kind of arrogant planning, doesn't it? James comes to mind.
James is definitely the lead voice here. He calls out people who make plans with total certainty, without any reference to God.
Like the businessman saying, today or tomorrow we'll go to this town, stay a year, trade, make a profit.
Exactly that guy. James looks at that kind of planning, detailed 5-year plans made without humility, and he doesn't hold back.
What does he call it?
He calls it boasting in your arrogance. And then he says flat out, all such boasting is evil. It's not just unwise, it's morally wrong.
Wow, evil. That's strong.
And it connects right back to Proverbs, doesn't it? Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring.
We just don't know. We don't even know if we'll be here tomorrow.
James is brutal on this point. He asks the planner, what is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes.
A mist. That image just shatters any illusion of control we might have.
It's meant to. So what's the antidote to that arrogance?
It's a mission, saying, if the Lord wills.
Exactly. Instead of certainty, the Christian posture is provisional. If the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. Planning, without acknowledging God's sovereignty, well, the sources say it's theological negligence. It's arrogance because every clock, every second is ultimately in his hands. Our plans have to be held loosely.
This warning feels especially relevant with what the sources call productivity porn.
Yes, that whole modern obsession with finding the perfect system, the best app, the ultimate routine, getting caught up in constantly tweaking how we work.
And that world often pushes a message that sounds disciplined, but it's actually very self-centered, isn't it?
Very much so. The advice is often to ruthlessly guard our sacred schedule from the invasions of others' needs and priorities.
Invasions, that word says a lot.
It really does. In that view, a successful day is one where your list gets done uninterrupted. Other people's needs, the unexpected call, the neighbor needing help, your spouse asking for something, they're seen as disruptions to fight off.
Which is the total opposite of the biblical mandate we talked about.
Exactly. It directly contradicts the call to have love for others drive our planning. We're meant to be available for our neighbor, not just locked into our own agenda.
Okay, so this is the core tension. We need discipline, that proactive work Paul talks about. But we also need humility, that reactive flexibility James demands, driven by love. How do we actually do both? How do we balance being proactive with being reactive and available?
Well, the sources point to a really helpful model in Titus 3, verse 14. It brings both sides together. Paul tells Titus that believers should learn to devote themselves to good works so as to help cases of urgent need and not be unfruitful.
So fruitfulness involves both things, doing the planned good works and helping with urgent, unplanned needs.
That's the idea. Good works need proactive effort. The disciplined work of our calling and reactive response being ready for those cases of urgent need that pop up.
So if we don't plan well, we fail at the proactive part.
Right, we're not fruitful in our main tasks.
But if we plan too rigidly, with no flexibility,
Then we fail at the reactive part. We're unavailable when love requires us to respond to an urgent need. We become unfruitful in a different way.
okay, so how do we build that proactive structure first?
The sources lay out a few practical steps. The first one is foundational. Consider your calling. And that means identifying your current primary role or roles where God has equipped you to serve others in this season of your life.
So it's not just about your job title.
Not necessarily. It could be your role as a parent, a student, a caregiver, a key volunteer. It's whatever main channel God has given you right now to pour out your time and energy for others' good.
And the emphasis is on present calling.
Yes, that's key. The sources mention, for example, a college student. Their main calling now is diligent study, serving that community. It's not organizing their life around some future business idea if it means neglecting their current duties.
Right. Focus on the good works prepared for this season.
Once you have a sense of that calling, the next step is practical prioritizing. Plan with big stones.
Ah, the rocks in the jar analogy. I like that one.
It's very useful. The big stones are those few really key priorities that are central to fulfilling your calling, the demanding tasks that actually make a difference for others.
So not just busy work, but the core stuff.
Exactly. You have to figure out what are your big stones. If you're a teacher, maybe it's lesson planning and focused grading. If you're in research, it's the deep work in the lab or archives, not just answering emails.
And the analogy works because of how you schedule them.
Right, precisely. Think of your week as a big glass jar. If you put the big stones, those 2 or 3 major high-impact tasks in first, scheduling them in the solid blocks.
Then the smaller stuff fits around them.
Yeah, the little pebbles, emails, quick calls, admin tasks, they can fill in the gaps.
And if you start with the pebbles,
The big stones just won't fit. They get pushed out. So scheduling those key priorities first, maybe with what the sources call fairly rigid blocks, is crucial. Otherwise, your main contributions, the things your neighbor really needs from you, get compromised.
okay, prioritize the big stones. Then what?
Step 3 is about timing. Make the most of your mornings.
This is common advice, but the sources give it a theological grounding too.
They do. Practically speaking, most people just have more energy, more focus, more willpower earlier in the day. It's often the best time for that deep, creative, proactive work, the big stones.
And fewer interruptions, usually.
Generally, yes. The morning hours are often less likely to be sidelined by interruptions that tend to pile up later. Emails, calls, unexpected crises, they often hit harder as the day goes on.
So tackling the big stuff early protects it.
It does. And spiritually, there's a pattern, too. Think of the psalmist seeking God early, or Jesus in Mark 1 getting up very early in the morning for prayer.
Setting the tone for the day.
Exactly. How you use your morning can really shape your heart's direction, especially if the very first thing is connecting with God before the world rushes in.
Okay, now connect this back to the main driver, love. How is getting up early and tackling my big tasks an act of love for others?
Because by doing that disciplined, proactive work first, the work your calling requires, you ensure you've actually delivered the good you owe your neighbor through your vocation.
So fulfilling my primary responsibilities is an act of love.
Yes, and completing that frees you up. It allows you, as the sources say, to go on the offensive with flexibility for unscheduled acts of love later in the day.
Because you're not stressed about neglecting your main job.
Right. You can respond to that unexpected need later with more grace and less resentment, knowing your core duties are handled.
Okay, that leads us nicely to the other side of the coin. The reactive part, flexibility, margin.
Yes. This is the humility piece, remembering James's warning. Planning has to include generous margin and planned flexibility.
It's like building theological space into the schedule.
That's a great way to think about it. It's space that acknowledges God's sovereignty. It says, I've planned diligently, but Lord, your will be done. This margin lets us handle the unexpected needs of others without the whole structure collapsing in stress or, worse, resentment.
So it's this balance again, structure and flexibility.
It's the synthesis the sources push for. Without the structure, the proactive work suffers. Our calling isn't fulfilled well.
And the neighbor misses out.
Right. But without the flexibility, the margin, we become unavailable for those urgent, reactive needs. We fail the love command when someone needs us now.
So discipline driven by love actually enables flexibility later on.
That seems to be the goal, a kind of structured freedom, you might say.
It sounds ideal, but let's be honest, it also sounds exhausting. And the sources acknowledge this, right? That we all fail at this.
Oh, absolutely. They're very clear. We are chronic time wasters. We all have bouts of lovelessness. We get distracted. We procrastinate. Nobody does this perfectly.
And that can lead to a lot of regret, can it? Thinking about wasted days, weeks, years.
Definitely. That feeling of regret over squandered time can be heavy, all those lost opportunities.
So what do we do with that regret?
The sources say, don't let it paralyze you. Let it do something productive. Let that regret drive you to Jesus.
To the only one who used his time perfectly.
Exactly. And let that same regret, fueled by faith in him, inspire you to more carefully count the days still ahead.
So learn from the past, but focus forward.
Yes. Because Christ has made us his own, we can move forward. We're not defined by our past failures in time management or anything else.
It sounds like Philippians 3, forgetting what's behind, straining forward.
Precisely. Paul says, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead, I press on. That's the gospel applied to our schedules. Our past time sins are covered. We can focus on stewarding this moment right now.
Because of God's grace.
Yes. The hope isn't in finding a better system next week. The hope is that the mercies of Christ are new every morning, even every hour, the sources say. We can always start fresh right now, trusting his grace.
That's incredibly freeing.
It is.
And when we do manage by grace to live out this balanced, proactive discipline fueled by love, reactive flexibility was the outcome.
The sources promise real joy. Not just satisfaction, but deep joy. They argue the greatest joys in life actually come from that self-sacrificial pouring out of our time and energy for others, all for God's glory.
So it's not about the joy of a perfectly clean inbox.
Not primarily, no. It's about experiencing the truth of what Jesus said, quoted in Acts 20. It is more blessed to give than to receive. That giving of our time, our energy for the neighbor, that's the blessedness. That's the real goal of Christian time stewardship. It's about being effective for love, not just efficient for self.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this deep dive up. The big picture seems to be this reconciled approach, right? It involves discipline, intentional planning. But the motivation has to be love for others.
Crucially.
And that structure needs to be balanced with generous flexibility, with margin built in.
It's a humility factor.
And the whole thing, every plan, every minute needs to be submitted to God's sovereign will, always praying if the Lord wills.
That sums it up well. It takes time management out of the self-help aisle and puts it right where it belongs, at the heart of Christian discipleship. Making our efforts count for the mission of love.
So here's a final thought for you to chew on, based on what we've discussed. The sources say the greatest joys come from pouring yourself out for others. How does remembering that change the way you feel when that flexibility you carefully planned gets used up? Not by something you wanted to do, but by a neighbor showing up with an unplanned, urgent, maybe even inconvenient need. Does your schedule and your heart submit joyfully to that call of love? Something to think about.
A challenging question, indeed. Thank you for digging into these sources with us today, everyone. It's been a great conversation on time, intentionality, and the Christian's clock.
Yeah, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll talk to you next time.